Good morning, everyone. My name is Craig McKinley. I'm the new business director for Kensington Mortgages. And today I'm going to talk to you about why I feel cheerful about buy-to-let and all the positive things about the market. So let's have a quick look at the agenda. So I'm going to talk to you about why buy-to-let still remains a very attractive investment, how lender appetite's quickly returning post-COVID, and there's lots of product supply and innovation, and the fact that I think this gives a really good opportunity both for your clients and also for you to grow your business as a broker. So moving on, you might think it's all doom and gloom. All you ever hear about in buy-to-let is bad news. You hear that there's a war on buy-to-let from the government, that all the landlords are leaving the market, that costs are out of control and there's huge tax bills. So lots and lots of bad news. But personally, I don't think it is all bad news. I think there's some good news out there. So we'll now look at how different asset classes have performed and why I think buy-to-let is still a really good asset class. So typically, if you had amount of money to invest, and I've used the example through here, through the different examples of £150,000, which is about the cost of an average buy-to-let across the UK. So if you had £150,000 and put that money into the stock market, you'd buy £150,000 of shares. And what I've done is I've looked at a 15-year period, so from 1995 till the end of last year, which I think is a reasonable period because it's quite long term. There's been quite a big crash there in the 2008 financial crisis, and then it takes you to the end of last year. I've kind of ignored this year because there's been a lot of volatility, and actually, although the market did collapse, it has come back quite strongly. But I've looked at the last 15 years. So if you'd have put your money in the stock market, what would have happened? Well, it would have grown by 67%. So that £150,000 you put in would be worth £250,000 now. So pretty good return. I haven't looked at dividend income because that kind of confuses the picture. And also when I look at buy-to-let, I haven't looked at rental income. They both run about 3%, so it feels reasonable that I've removed it from both of them. So I'm just looking at the capital growth. So 67% in the stock market. Now let's have a look at what would happen if you'd have bought a buy-to-let property with that £150,000. Well, the good news is the property has gone up. You can see again the charts. You had a big crash there for the financial crisis, and we've had some really strong growth in the last few years. So the good news is your £150,000 has grown to £325,000. So it's more than doubled in that period. So whereas putting the money in the stock market got you 67% growth and 100,000, putting it into a buy-to-let property gave you capital growth of £175,000. So pretty good, a much better investment. And it gets even more interesting if we move on and look at what happens if you use a mortgage. So same thing, got £150,000, you buy a £150,000 property. If you did a 60% loan to value, so you borrowed £90,000 from a lender, put £60,000 of your own money in, what would happen then? Again, the same property price, your £150,000 property has grown to £325,000, but you put £60,000 in. So you sell the property for the £325,000, you give £90,000 back to the kind lender who lent you the money, you walk away with £235,000 compared to the £60,000 you put in. So you've nearly grown your money by 4 times. And then an even more extreme example, if you did an 85% loan to value, which Kensington traditionally offer in the last couple of years, what would happen then? So you'd only put £23,000 of your own money into that property that cost £150,000. Again, the property is worth £325,000. We're talking about the same property in all examples, but your £23,000 has grown to £198,000, which is what you're left with after you've repaid the lender. So that's grown by nearly 9 times. You've put £23,000 in, you walk out with £198,000. So this is what we call a leveraged investment. If you put £150,000 into the stock market, you only get £150,000 worth of shares. If you put £150,000 in buy-to-let and get a few different mortgages, you can grow, you can buy a lot more property. So if you look at 75% loan to value, you take that £150,000 you'd turn that into a much bigger number. And in the extreme example here, the 85 loan to value, you would end up with £1.2 million worth of property if you'd invested £150,000. And that's the advantage of buy-to-let versus shares. And that's the advantage of taking a mortgage and leveraging that money, so you can take your money, put the bank's money in or a lender's money in, and really grow that to a much bigger number. And that's why buy-to-let is still so attractive. So let's, apart from the capital growth, what else has been happening in buy-to-let? So in terms of product provision, there's much more choice. There was a big drop, you can see there, after the financial crisis, huge amount of products before the last financial crisis. That then slowly came back up till the middle of last year, 2,500 products. Now, products have gone down during COVID. There's, some lenders have left the market. The good news is virtually everybody's back in the buy-to-let market now. Some lenders are only lending to 60%, some are only doing remo or purchase. Now, most people are doing most things. So although we're not back to the 2,400 products, we've got a lot more than we had at the start of the crisis, and it's going up every week. So I think we'll be back to a huge range of products, hopefully towards the end of the year, but there's a huge amount of choice. And then we've also got whole new segments opening up. So new types of landlord coming into the market, new opportunities. So we've got older borrowers. So at Kensington, we'll now lend to someone who's up to 110 years old. And in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got first-time buyers. So we potentially first-time landlords, non-owner occupiers, so they don't own a property and they're buying their first property as a buy-to-let. We'll accept that. So much younger customers and much older customers. The market's really expanding. And then you've got things like HMOs and MUBs, which just grow every year. Fantastic yield, typically yield far much better than a single property. You can get yields of 7, 8, sometimes even 9 or 10%. So that's a new market that's really been opening up a lot in the last few years. And then limited company. Limited company may now seem like a standard part of the buy-to-let market. It's only a few years old. It's only about 4 or 5 years old. Yet for some people, some specialists like Kensington, it's about half of what we sell. So it's a big new market. Really helps if you've got high rate taxpayers, potentially lower their tax, although they always need to get tax advice before they do that. But lots of new opportunities. And then moving on to look at pricing. So rates are still low, and actually rates have fallen further since COVID as lenders try and look for solid low risk business, which buy-to-let's typically pretty good risk. So really low rates. And although some of the headlines we saw at the start of the presentation are correct, landlords have got increasing costs in some way. They've got more taxes, for instance. There's more regulation. The cost of having a mortgage has reduced. So that has allowed them, and they can also do things like rent increases every year. That has allowed landlords to maintain their profitability over the last few years. So despite all the challenges and the problems, they've kept the same level of profitability because mortgages have got cheaper, which is really important. So that's great news. And now moving on again, service. The last thing I wanted to talk about was service. So certainly at Kensington, we've been looking how we can transform our service to brokers and customers. So our aim is we want to give brokers the best of both worlds. We want to give you high street speeds, but with specialist underwriting and a manual underwriting and no credit score that can look at all the complexities of the buy-to-let case. Things like looking at large portfolios, limited companies, all those kind of things, but give you the high street speed. So we've committed to the manual underwriter, but we're using technology on the left-hand side of the page to try and speed everything up to the underwriter. And once the underwriter's looked at it, everything up past the underwriter. So we've got several sets of robots in our offices, they're actually lines of code rather than little kind of robots. They don't need anywhere to sit. And they do things like the solicitor's check. So rather than the underwriter selecting something on their PC that then goes and checks the solicitor's website to make sure the solicitor's details are correct and the solicitor's still active, the robot does that. Similar with land reg checks and FCA checks for brokers, all done by robotics. We've got integration with some of the sourcing systems to make it really easy for you guys. You just fill in details once on fact find. It takes the detail from your CRM system and gives it straight to us, so you don't have to rekey. And then we're checking all this. We've got Trustpilot. We're rated excellent on Trustpilot. We do constant surveys. to make sure we're giving you the best service we can. We were down to 10-day app to offer before the crisis. Obviously, it's been a difficult period with valuations, etc., but we're committed to getting back to there. And ideally, we want to be down to about 5 days in the next 12 months, which means we'll be going head-to-head with the high street, but still giving you the specialist underwriting. And then finally, what can Kensington offer? Well, hopefully we can give you the breadth of proposition that allows you to appeal to all these different type of landlords and customer bases. So we've got young customers, we go all the way up to 110, so you've got different client groups, you've got different types of products. So we've got things for high earners, we've got things like top slicing, so you can use your high income to help the affordability of the mortgage. If you've had some credit blips, we'll consider that. We'll look at portfolio landlords, absolutely do a lot of portfolio landlords, HMOs and multi-unit blocks, and then higher LTVs. So we were at 85 LTV before the crash, before the crisis. You know, we expect to get back there hopefully sometime soon, and things like top slicing. So whatever your client needs are, and there's so many different opportunities now, we believe we can give them a solution. So that pretty much summarizes it. But that's why I'm still optimistic about buy-to-let. I still think it represents a great asset class, and there's more choice and more opportunity than ever before. So thank you very much for your attention.